amazing Australians and the story of their lives. You're tuned to Lots to Chat About with Rosemary Peterswald.
Hello and welcome, listeners. Today we have a very special show. I don't have just one guest, but I have two. We have General Sir Peter Cosgrove and the wonderful, renowned poet Rupert McCall. Welcome to you both.
Really nice to be here. I'm honoured.
Yes, I'm glad to be back, I can tell you.
It's wonderful to have you both here. Now, Rupert is our poet of the generation. We're going to listen to Sir Peter read his wonderful poem, 100 Years From Now. And others he has penned brought many tears to our eyes, including the tennis star Roger Federer and New York firefighters reflecting on the terror attacks of 9/11. Rupert has saluted in verse our ANZACs on the shore of Gallipoli and penned tributes to sporting legends and other legendary Australians, and our unique way of life. Rupert is the author of 6 anthologies of verse that have collectively sold over 120,000 copies. He is equally at home in radio or TV, hosting roles for Channel 7 and the Great South East 4BC Sports Today and Channel 9 Weekend Extra. In 2007, he was commentator for Channel 10 at the 2007 Rugby World Cup in France. In 2005, he opened the Prelude, the dawn service in Gallipoli, with his tribute 90 years ago. And in 2013, he received the OAM for services to the community, particularly as a poet. And he has just produced, or we are lucky enough to have his new book of poems, Golden Soil. Now, Sir Peter Cosgrove, as we all know, was the past Governor-General of Australia. And Sir Peter has very kindly agreed to read one of Rupert's poem, and then we'll have a little discussion about it. So would you mind reading that for us, Sir Peter?
I'd be honoured. I've had the great pleasure of listening to Rupert's poetry in the past, and it never fails but to uplift you and reach right into your heart. And this is one such. The title of this poem is 100 Years From Now. Now, our listeners will understand that in the shadow of ANZAC Day, this always will do, as I said, reach into the heart. I'll try to do it justice, Rupert.
Thank you, mate.
100 years from now, when the sounding of the bugle sent a shiver down my spine, when I felt a sense of duty and stepped up to join the line, a song was sung, my heart was young, the ship, it sailed away, when I caught my mother crying and I had no words to say, when I wore my country's coat of arms to pledge a solemn vow, I didn't think they'd honour me 100 years from now. When I landed in an ambush on that distant foreign shore, when I saw the bullets flying and I heard the cannon roar, I turned my head. My friend lay dead. It happened so damn fast. When I made it through the mayhem of that terrifying blast, when I managed to survive that day, still, I don't know how, I didn't think they'd tell the tale 100 years from now. When the battle raged forever and adversity was rife, when the courage and the sacrifice were daily facts of life. As darkness fell, it seemed like hell, but mateship got us through. When nothing else made any sense, that's the flag we flew. When thoughts of home revived my strength and wiped my bloody brow, I didn't think they'd call me brave 100 years from now. When I felt a chill that morning, when my heart beat like a drum, when the captain gave his orders and I knew the time had come, no glory there, just pure despair, my best is what I gave. When they wrote, lest we forget, upon the headstone of my grave. When beside my cross the children of the future stopped to bow, my spirit will remain alive 100 years from now. When the sounding of the bugle sends a shiver down your spine, when you understand the blood you bleed is just the same as mine, from dreamtime land to coastal sand, the city to the sprawl, when the essence of my legacy unites Australians all. When ANZAC legend shines a light on all who make that vow, with pride, the world will know their name 100 years from now. And their courage will be just the same 100 years from now. A poem by Rupert McCall.
Thank you, Sir Peter. That was beautifully, beautifully read.
Yeah.
Now, Rupert, the spirit of ANZAC's been your inspiration for as long as you can remember, really. And your grandfather, Barney McCall, fought as a rat of Tobruk in World War II. So tell us a little bit more about the inspiration for that wonderful poem.
He did. Thanks, Sir Peter, for putting a shiver down my spine with that recital. I couldn't think of anyone more worthy to embrace those words and that sentiment. My grandfather, Barney McCall, christened Francis John McCall, but from the day he got home from hospital, his family called him Barney, of course, was a rat of Tobruk, God bless those boys, in World War II, of course, the 2nd 15th. Now, the long story short is that Barney basically instilled the spirit of ANZAC in my blood. Growing up, going to ANZAC Day services, dawn ceremonies, with my dad and his dad, my grandfather and my brothers. It was just something that became very, very special, like on our calendar. And the stories that he told after a few beers when we got back to back to Turner Street, Scarborough, were legendary. So when I, many years later, and as I said, it's the long story short, when I was commissioned or asked to pay tribute, first of all to the 90th anniversary at the landing of Gallipoli.
Yes.
And I wrote a poem called 90 Years Ago and travelled to Turkey. So the tribute that Sir Peter just recited was 10 years later when the Australian War Memorial asked me to write something for ANZAC Centenary. But just rewinding 10 years before, and I'm standing by the side of the stage with this poem, and it was the biggest stage of my life. There was 15 to 20,000 people there at ANZAC Cove, and it's so cold. It is absolutely freezing, and I am as nervous as I've ever been in my life.
Well, there were quite a few celebrities and royalty there, wasn't there, as well, that you were reciting in front? I think Prince Charles was there, wasn't he?
That's part of the story, Rosemary.
Oh, right.
I'm thinking I'm just going to crumble here.
Yes.
Because I'm not sure the poem's good enough. I'm not sure I'm good enough.
Right.
I'm standing there, but then I had my grandfather's ID bracelet from Tobruk. It was like a necklace or a leather necklace. He'd call them his meat tickets, but I had that there for a little bit of courage. And all of a sudden, I had this sense of perspective and a warmth that flowed through my blood, and I realised in my own mind that I was standing on the same patch of sand that 90 years before that young Australian kids, the age of my boys now, were jumping out of a boat, trying to get through the water, trying not to get shot, watching their mates die, find shelter just to survive that day, and all I had to do was recite a poem. And I stood up, and somehow I delivered. But standing up there, I looked at the front row because the light was shining down, and there was our Prime Minister, John Howard, the New Zealand Prime Minister, Helen Clark, Prince Charles, of course, and that was a real spin-out for me because it was like, wow, Prince Charles is in the mosh pit. But you're always looking for a face of encouragement, something to kind of lift you and push you through. And I saw the General, Peter Cosgrove, and I knew I was in good company, and we got the job done.
How wonderful. Now, recently, Sir Peter, I listened to the wonderful talk that you gave to the Menzies Institute about the spirit of ANZAC, and I was going to ask you that it is still very much there, isn't it? And what I'm delighted to think about is it's there with a lot of young ones, isn't it?
It is, and it stands up to you in various ways. If you grab vignettes, that helps you. I was asked a number of years ago, was the spirit of ANZAC sort of fading? And I remembered just recently before that question was posed to me that I'd been at a place just the other side of the New South Wales-Queensland border at Kingscliff. And they had a little memorial thing out on the headland there, a little plinth and a little obelisk. And it was desperate. Cold. It was cold on ANZAC Day, dawn service. And there's a handful of us up there, 20 or 30, and they're doing the usual thing. And in the dim light, which was illuminating the memorial, and they're going through the various things of, odes and all that sort of thing, I could see that there's a bunch of men and some ladies, but there was this particular family, looked like a young bloke, maybe in his 30s, and two little kids, 5 or 6, boy and girl, and they're all rugged up because it's cold, and he's kneeling down alongside them. And as the ceremony is proceeding, he's whispering in their ear and he's telling them what they're watching.
Right.
At sort of 5 o'clock in the morning in this lonely place.
Yes.
And the kids their eyes are as big as saucers. And that to me answered the question. Is the spirit of ANZAC fading? No, not while you've got fathers talking to sons and daughters and telling them why it is special to us. The other one was actually as Rupert, because I want to riff on what Rupert told us about that wonderful 90th anniversary, and that is how it was cold as. But later in the same day at Lone Pine, just up the hill, but a fair way. I mean, it's a good slog. How our soldiers in their slouch hats and their thin shirts just sort of kept going up that hill was amazing. This is Lone Pine, where huge battles took place in August of 1915. Anyway, it's an Australian-only ceremony. Some Turks, of course, and some of the other diplomat-type people,
yes.
But it's for Australians. And in the morning, it had been my observation that I was stuck in amongst a bunch of Kiwis, and when they were singing national anthems, they sang their anthem in full throat. It was fantastic.
Right.
But there were a lot of Australians there. So when I went up to Lone Pine before the ceremony with John Howard, I went to a great group of Australians sitting in stands and I said, now listen to me. This morning, I think the Kiwis beat us on the anthem.
All right.
And I want you to sing the birds
hard.
out of the trees
Yeah.
when we do our anthem.
Right.
That's my plea to you.
Yes.
And you should have heard it.
Oh.
It possibly wasn't opera standard,
Yes.
but in terms of energy, you would have beaten a grand final crowd at the MCG.
Oh,
It
how
was
wonderful.
fantastic.
Yeah.
That's the spirit of ANZAC. And then somebody said to me, oh, look, complain, because we have spectators, Australians, on the gravestones, on the graves of the people buried on the flat part of the Lone Pine Memorial. Oh, there's hundreds of graves there.
Yes.
And there were some journalists looking for a
Headline.
So I thought quickly. I said, "Oh no!" I said, "I don't agree with you at all. Those soldiers lying in those graves would have been thrilled to bits that their fellow Australians had come all the way halfway around the world
Yes.
to commemorate there, and they'd have been calling out, 'Sit on my grave, mate. You're welcome.'"
Isn't that wonderful? And the Turks are so pleased to have us there, aren't they?
Well, look, they do, because they've struck in Australians and Kiwis and perhaps the Brits and the French who are also on that peninsula, but they've struck that sweet spot where people say, well, we fought, and we fought for valid reasons, but let's not remain separated by the sacrifice. Let's use it to say, can we learn from this?
I remember, Rupert and Sir Peter, many years ago, we were sailing in the Mediterranean, as we did for many years on our yacht, and I went to a market in Turkey and said I was from Australia. And the young fellow behind the counter was so excited, and he said his grandfather was in the war. And what he said, which really put a tinkle up me, was in my spine, was that although they fought the Australians, they admired them because they were gentlemen. And whereas a lot of the others weren't, the Australians on the whole were gentlemen. But Rupert, I'm just going to ask you now about your other terrific, there's many poems, we could talk about them all, but the Ode, which you mention, which we're coming forward now, of course, to a more recent war, and you mention every one of the 41 soldiers tragically killed, and the 42nd soldier, this is in Afghanistan, the 42nd soldier, of course, who you have mentioned in there as well in your poem, is for those who have since died by their own hand when they were just unable to cope with the darkness when they came home. So I was just going to ask you a little bit about that poem and then run it past Sir Peter as well, because that is a real problem, isn't it, at the moment?
Oh, it is. It's ongoing. I'm wearing the shirt actually, 42 for 42. It's an organisation that I'm an ambassador for these days, and it pays respect to all return servicemen and women, but more specifically those who fought and made the ultimate sacrifice in Afghanistan, young men trying to put their lives back together, and young women
Yes.
for that matter. We band together from the grassroots of these service people returning and built a memorial in the little garden beside Suncorp Stadium, adjacent to the walls of the stadium and the Anglican Church. And there's 42 plaques in that garden, 41 young Australians who didn't return home to their families,
Yes.
made the ultimate sacrifice. And the 42nd soldier who continues to die on home soil. That number is concerning, and I suppose it's been the same for every war that was fought. But just because Operation Slipper ends or the war in Afghanistan ends, the war doesn't end for a lot of those who took part in it, and I think that's something that we need to acknowledge.
Absolutely. So, Peter, I mean, it is a tragic, it is just absolutely tragic. Was it as bad after the Vietnam War, which you were so involved in?
It's always terrible when you're watching, I won't call it slow motion because it's anything but if you're involved in that sort of combat. It's terrifying, I've got no doubt, but it lasted so long. And that's part of the sadness of reflection, something that lasts so long and you think...
and people went back, soldiers went back time and time again, didn't they?
Multiple tours of duty.
Yes.
And each time they put their lives on the line, they left family at home. They were there for a number of months of intense operations.
Yes.
And then came home for a break. But if it's a break that is just presaging that you're going back, then the agony continues. I opened up the ode while you were discussing it with Rupert, but I just read two verses from it. There's
Sure, yeah. I mean, before Peter does that, one of the fathers of a fallen soldier, Ray Palmer, whose son Scotty was killed in a Black Hawk helicopter, asked if I would pay tribute to the boys. He called them his boys, and I wanted to write something that mentioned every name and just gave that name, some spotlight and some meaning, so that it would contribute, to these young men not being forgotten.
And I went to the memorial, and I can't remember the name of the place, but right up in the inland from Cairns, Gordon Chuck actually.
Youngaborough, yeah.
Yes, Gordon Chuck set that up. Sadly, Gordon's son was killed
in the same accident, in that same helicopter
Absolutely.
accident.
And that memorial is just beautiful. But we'd love to hear that, Sir Peter.
I'm just going to read a couple of the verses because the name of one of the soldiers mentioned in the poem is somebody who was serving while I was Chief of the Defence Force. A lot of the others were a bit after my time, but this one is the sort of, this is the bugle call of the ode. This ode awoke this morning from the darkness of a dream. This ode absorbed adversity and rose up to redeem. This ode stood tall with honour when its sentiment was penned. This ode begins with courage, and with courage it will end. This ode decrees to never let their valour go unchecked. This ode would ask for nothing but an ear of due respect. This ode defended freedom in its time of greatest tussle. This ode was there the day they fell. This ode is Andrew Russell. Now, Andrew was our first fatality in Afghanistan. We were there for about a year, and then came home, and then went back in about 2005. And all the other names of this long agony are recorded in the ode that Rupert's written for us.
There's a lot of controversy at the moment, of course, about Afghanistan, and I wonder how it's affecting our recruiting, because sadly there is a huge drop in recruitment in Australia, isn't there, at the moment?
There is, but I wouldn't put it down to a disillusionment with the notion of service. To do that, people would have to have significantly thought about what that service entails and then measured off whether it's compelling for them to put on a uniform, train and put on a uniform. So the difficulty we have, and this is getting from the lyrical to the pragmatic, we have to say that the explanation to our fellow Australians that there could be an emerging threat to Australia that is different to that of the last 50 years, then we We possibly haven't done that because it's a political judgment as to whether you say now, the sky's falling, Chicken Little, the sky's falling. You don't want to be the Jeremiah or the Hanrahan using a pole.
We'll all be ruined.
We'll all be ruined. So you can go a bit too far, you can cry wolf and all that sort of thing. So somehow we have to attract people for altruistic reasons, but also to show them that they won't be worse off if they do this, to skill them, to pay them, to give them skills that they can translate after a period of service, and that their life hasn't disappeared down the gurgler. There are some natural soldiers and there are some who find out that they're natural soldiers, and there are some who reluctantly serve but then find redeeming characteristics about their service. And we don't really mind so long as they're serving Australia and doing it wholeheartedly and with all their skills. And that's the sort of person, man or woman, whether they are Indigenous people, whether they are, long-term residents of Australia or brand new. Who cares? Serving Australia is the goal, and we need all of them. That is, every person, we need all of their effort. So there are ways of doing that. We just have to get stuck in.
So Peter was at Duntroon with Rupert with my brother and my husband.
Okay.
And now we have a grandson who's just gone through there. And I must admit, being at the graduation parade last year and seeing the wonderful young men that are joining our services is something. But I'm going to move on to something.
But it is a family. It is, Rosemary, it's a family business. You understand that?
Yeah.
Sounds like it.
I do, yes. I'm very proud, actually, that my family's got a couple of VCs and in the past, so they are carrying on the tradition.
The legacy.
But I'm going to move on now because, Rupert, I'm going to ask you, if that's okay, to read us a couple of verses of We Play the Game.
Why we play the game?
Both of you are rugby players, and I've just got to do a little bit of skiting here because the Lions are coming to Australia, and as our readers know, I'm Irish, and I think there are 14 members Irish in the Lions squad, very few English, and I think there's only 3 or 4 Welsh at the moment. So I'm looking forward to the Lions
and
coming.
a few Scots in there as well. But
the
Irish
Scots
do dominate because they have dominated the Six Nations over the last few seasons, along with the French, who can't be selected, of course, for the Lions. I mean, it's just such a great time to be a rugby fan when the Lions are on the way into town and all their supporters, Peter.
Yeah, I must say it's much more fun to beat the Poms than any of the others.
Exactly.
Well, that's exactly right.
we first connected through the bonds of rugby, Sir Peter and I.
Oh, right.
Yeah, we came together at a little event, or I think it was fairly impromptu, but it was a gathering, an occasion up at Victoria Barracks, just after John Eales had captained the Wallabies to the Rugby World Cup in 1999. And then, of course, he captained the Wallabies to British Lions success, which I don't think happens too often, for an Australian. So Ealesy's a mate of mine. I played rugby with him at Brothers.
Oh, okay.
And and Peter's crossed paths with John, of course, and just such a down-to-earth gentleman for such a great captain and talented second rower. He did it all as a rugby player, and so wearing the sacred butcher stripes for Brothers Rugby Club alongside John through the Colts, and we won a Colts 1 grand final, and then beyond that is the inspiration for this poem, which is actually a question. The title, Why We Play the Game. Well, as the poem unfolds, you'll get the picture. So it's pretty much a true story, and I won't do the whole thing. I'll just give you a little extract.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yes.
When the battle scars have faded and the truth becomes a lie, when the weekend's smell of liniment could almost make you cry, when the last ruck's well behind you, the man who ran now walks, doesn't matter who you are. The mirror sometimes talks. I mean, have a good hard look there. The melon's not that great. The nose that takes a sharp turn sideways used to be dead straight. You're an advert for arthritis. You're a thoroughbred gone lame. And you ask yourself the question, why the hell you played the game? I mean, was there logic in the head knocks, in the corks and in the cuts? Did common sense get pushed aside by manliness and guts? Do you sometimes sit and wonder why your time would often pass in a tangled mess of bodies with your head up someone's... Do you sometimes...
Good.
That thumb hooked up your nostril, scratching gently on your brain with an overgrown Neanderthal, rejoicing in your pain. You must recall that jersey that was shredded into rags, then the soothing sting of Dettol on a back engraved with tags. It's almost worth admitting, though with some degree of shame, that your wife was right in asking, why the hell do you play this game? But yet, with every wound reopened as you grimly reminisce, it comes the most compelling feeling yet. Gee, I bloody miss it. From the first time that you laced a boot and tightened every stud, that virus known as rugby has been living in your blood. When you dreamt it, when you played it, all the rest took second fiddle, and now you're standing on the sideline, but your heart's still in the middle. And no matter where you travel, you can take it as expected. There will always be a breed of people hopelessly infected. If there's a teammate, you will find him, like a gravitating force, with a common understanding and a beer or three, of course, as you stand there telling lies like it was yesterday, old friend. You know that if you had the chance, you'd do it all again. You see, that's the thing with rugby. It will always be the same, and that I guarantee is why the hell you played the game.
Hear, hear.
Absolutely. And my husband was a rugby player, and at the moment he's got a very sore arthritic hand because I think every finger was broken playing rugby. So I can quite understand that poem. But Rupert, now, I actually sent the video of you recording Blood and Bone Maroon to my son-in-law, but also my granddaughter's boyfriend, who's an absolute, well, I have to say he's a bit rugby league fan, and we're having Wally Lewis on in a few weeks' time.
The king.
But it brought them virtually to tears because it is the most wonderful patriotic Queensland poem. So,
Well, I mean, you know, I'm a Queensland supporter, obviously, and
Redcliffe.
very passionate from the Redcliffe Peninsula. And I had this beautiful collision of forces when I was in grade 5. And again, I won't ramble on, but basically I got introduced to the poetry of Banjo Patterson through a bush christening as a poem we had to learn as a class to recite at a parent-teacher night. In the same month as Arthur Beetson led Queensland out of the tunnel for that first State of Origin game in 1980.
Right.
So I didn't know it then, but that unlikely collision of Banjo Patterson and Arthur Beetson, it lit a spark, you know, inside my heart, and it just caught fire as the years evolved. And the very first poem, I think, that made it into a publication, which was Rugby League Week,
Yes.
I wrote when I was an article clerk in a law firm in Brisbane, and the poem was just called Queenslander. And the last two lines of that poem are, beware the wounded Queenslander as he battles for the crown. Never write him off, and he will never let you down. Now, I wrote that 32 years ago, and it still applies today. So Blood and Bone Maroon was requested by Billy Slater when he was given the opportunity to coach the team, and Tani, our women's coach as well. And so I don't have, it's not in this book, and I don't have it here, but what I really wanted to kind of connect with was the fact that every, you know, young Queenslander, you know, let's face it, we're on this side of the border, you know, who runs out on May the 28th, comes from a family, you know, of mums and dads who drove them to, you know, junior footy games, and you know, just so that emotion of connecting with where it all began in the backyard,
Yes.
and the backyard dream, and what the, you know, the local footy club did for them, and the lady at the tuck shop, and the mum and dad. I mean, that's what we play for, right? Yeah.
So, Peter, where do your loyalties lie there?
Well, I've had many postings up in Queensland, and of course, when you can't be with the one you love the one you're with. But I'm a cockroach. I'm a blue. I can recall when I had a posting in Brisbane, serving at an Ogra, and it was a very tight series that year, the particular year I'm talking about, and the Blues won in the last seconds of the game to wrap up the series. So it was 2-1,
Right.
and we were living out at the Gap, and across the road from us were some good friends, and they were Queenslanders through and through. And when full time was blown, I went to the front door with my boys, they're teenagers, to go over and sort of poke my tongue out at them. and these guys had come over late in the game and they'd sandbagged up my entire door. I couldn't get out of the premises.
Gotta love the rivalry.
Oh, yeah. But I can tell you that just wrap up my own paltry rugby career. I was a cheat, and when I was at school, I became a bit of a cheat, sort of like an apprentice cheat. Then as I got older, I matriculated in cheating. And that when I retired, I took a university degree in cheating. And when you do that, you become a referee.
All right. How wonderful. And do you suffer? Have you got arthritis like Rob has?
I don't know. I'm not athletic enough. Have you ever seen a rhino doesn't? No, not a rhino. A hippo doesn't do much. There are gazelles. If you applied, zoology to rugby, you've got giraffes, you've got gazelles, you've got springboks, you've got badgers. And then you've got the hippos of the game, and these are people who don't move fast or very far. They stay in the middle of the field, and they rarely make contact with another player, but when they do, they're extremely vicious.
Right.
You can't win the game without them, basically. No. But that's the law of the jungle, right?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Gosh, I could go on talking to you two for hours, I must admit. But sadly, I'm sitting here with Paul, our wonderful producer, and looking at Sir Peter and Rupert through the window there, and I don't want it to finish. But we must finish. But thank you very, very much, General Sir Peter Cosgrove and renowned poet Rupert McCall, for being my guest today. I just want to give Rupert's book, Golden Soil, a little bit of a plug, which is a magnificent book of his poems. And if you want to order that book, you can go on www.rupertmccall.com.au, and Rupert will send you a personally signed book.
I will, Rosemary, as I did for you. Thanks for your order. Golden Soil's my best of anthology, so it's like my greatest hits album. And so a lot of the poems that we've discussed this afternoon are within these pages. And the book that I'm holding in my hands, I've signed to Peter and Lynn Cosgrove, my good mate sitting beside me. So that's yours, mate.
Well, I'm most honoured to have that. And I can assure listeners that this is part of the ongoing Rupert McCall story. He'll keep writing. And it's been a real buzz to see you again. I'm very pleased, Rosemary. Thank you for conceiving of this. I really enjoyed your company, but particularly Rupert today. Thank you.
Feelings mutual, mate. Cheers.
It's been wonderful. Thank you both, and thank you, Paul. And this program was recorded in the studios of 4RPH Reading Radio Brisbane for syndication around Australia.
Great friends and great chats. That was another Lots to Chat About with Rosemary Peterswald. Stay tuned next week for another amazing chat.